She said it with a smile, a slow, measured curve of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. "Watch your back," she murmured softly, her voice smooth as honey and twice as dangerous. Her words slipped through the quiet hum of conversation, like a blade leaving a hush in their wake. I didn't flinch, not on the outside at least. I held her gaze steadily, my face calm and polite, as if we were just two old friends sharing secrets over coffee. But inside my heart was a quiet drumbeat of warning. She meant it. She wanted me to know that she had her eye on me and that I was in her way. The room around us buzzed with the gentle murmur of people who hadn't heard the chill in her voice, who didn't see the glint in her eyes. They went on sipping their drinks and sharing their polite laughter, blissfully unaware of the small war she had just declared. But I saw it. And more importantly, I understood it. She was the type of woman who liked to wrap her threats in silk and sugar, who preferred her knives hidden behind a smile. And once upon a time, I might have believed that was all there was to her. But not today. Today I knew better. "Is that supposed to scare me?" I asked, my voice quiet and even. The small, curious tilt of my head was the only sign that I was paying attention. She leaned back in her chair, a flicker of something sharp and satisfied in her eyes. "Oh, darling," she said softly, her tone almost affectionate. "It's not meant to scare you. It's meant to remind you. You're not as safe as you think." I let her words hang in the air, their weight settling around us like smoke. I could have argued, could have met her threat with one of my own. But that wasn't how I played this game. I had learned long ago that sometimes the strongest move was no move at all. So I just smiled, a small, polite smile that didn't show my teeth. "Thank you for the reminder," I said softly. "I'll be sure to keep it in mind." Her lips curved a little higher, a flash of triumph in her eyes, as if she thought she had won something important. But she didn't see what I saw. She didn't see the way her words had only confirmed what I had suspected all along, that she was afraid. Not of me exactly, but of what I might become if I stopped caring about her threats. And that was a fear she couldn't hide, no matter how carefully she dressed it up. As the conversation shifted around us, she turned her attention back to the group, her laughter ringing out clear and bright, like nothing had happened. But every so often, her eyes would flick back to mine, searching for a crack in my calm. She wouldn't find it, because I had already decided I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me rattle. When the meeting ended, I gathered my things slowly, my movements deliberate. I could feel her watching me, the weight of her gaze like a hand on my shoulder. But I didn't let it touch me. I moved with the quiet certainty of someone who had learned the power of patience, of silence. Outside, the air was crisp and bright, the sunlight turning the world into a shimmer of gold. I paused on the steps, the hum of traffic and the laughter of strangers, a gentle soundtrack to the storm that had just begun. I took a slow breath, feeling the chill of her words settle into the back of my mind like a promise. She wanted me to be afraid. She wanted me to watch my back so closely that I forgot to watch hers, but she didn't know me as well as she thought. At home, I sat by the window, with a cup of tea, the quiet of my small apartment wrapping around me like a shield. I thought about the way her eyes had glittered with that quiet threat, the soft edges of her words hiding something sharp and jagged. And I thought about how once upon a time I might have let that scare me into silence. But not now. I had spent too long learning the language of shadows and quiet glances, too long listening to the things people didn't say as carefully as the things they did. I had learned that sometimes the best way to fight back was to say nothing at all, to let them believe they had the upper hand, while I watched and waited. So that's what I did. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I didn't waste my breath trying to prove to her that I wasn't afraid. Instead, I let her keep talking, keep weaving her careful web of threats and half-truths. And all the while, I watched. Because she had told me to watch my back. But she had forgotten who was watching her. That night, as I lay in the quiet dark of my room, I whispered it to myself like a vow. "You're not the only one with eyes." And in that whisper, I felt the first quiet stirrings of something that wasn't fear at all. It was strength. It was resolve. It was the steady knowledge that she might have started this game, but I would decide how it ended. The day after her threat, I woke early to the quiet hush of a gray morning. The sky was heavy with clouds that promised rain, and the air carried that faint electric chill that always comes before a storm. I stood by the window with my coffee, watching the city slowly come alive beneath the soft light. And in that stillness, I felt a calm settle into my bones, a deliberate, measured calm that felt like armor. I didn't rush. I didn't let the weight of her words push me into frantic motion. I moved slowly, methodically, letting each small task become a quiet act of defiance. I made my bed, brewed my coffee, and wrote in my journal with careful, steady letters, "I will not be rattled. I will not be rushed." The world around me went on as it always did: traffic in the streets, laughter in the cafes, the gentle murmur of life moving forward. But beneath the surface, I could feel the subtle shift, like the first hint of an undertow pulling at my feet. Her threat had been a ripple in the calm, a small crack that could have widened into something bigger if I let it. But I wouldn't. I knew better than to show my hand too soon. At work, I kept my head down and my eyes open. She was there, of course, moving through the halls with that same easy smile that never reached her eyes. She greeted everyone with soft words and gentle laughter, but I could see the way her gaze flickered when she thought no one was watching. The small, careful glances over her shoulder. The tightness in her jaw when she thought she was alone. She was afraid. I saw it in the small, quiet ways she tried to keep control, always moving just a little too quickly, always talking just a little too loudly. And I understood then that her threat had been as much for herself as it was for me. A way to remind herself that she was still in charge, still powerful, but she wasn't. I started to pay closer attention, not just to her words, but to the things she didn't say. The way her laughter would falter for a split second when she caught me watching. The way she would change the subject when someone asked too many questions. I let those small details become my map, each one a quiet landmark on the path she thought she had hidden. At home, I kept to my routines, each small act of normalcy, a quiet anchor against the pull of her manipulations. I cooked simple meals, read late into the night, and let the steady rhythm of my life become the foundation I stood on, because I knew that she wanted me to feel unsteady. She wanted me to question every shadow, every whisper in the dark. But I refused to give her that power. Some nights, when the world was dark and still, I would lie awake and let myself feel the quiet fear that her threat had stirred. I didn't try to push it away. I let it wash over me in small waves, each one a reminder that fear didn't have to be the end of the story, that sometimes fear was just the first step toward something stronger. I whispered it to myself in the dark, "I will not be afraid." And each time the words felt a little more true. At work, she tried to test me in small ways, subtle jabs and quiet provocations, each one meant to shake the calm I wore, like a second skin. A small cutting remark in a meeting, a carefully phrased question meant to undermine my confidence. But I didn't bite. I let her words wash over me like water refusing to let them find purchase. Because I knew that if I reacted now, if I let her see even a flicker of uncertainty, she would take it as proof that she was winning. And I wasn't about to give her that. Instead, I watched. I listened. I let her believe that I was still playing by her rules, still trapped in the small, careful world she had created. And all the while, I was building something she couldn't see. A quiet strength. A patient resolve. One evening, as I walked home through the soft hush of falling rain, I thought about the game she thought she was playing, how she believed that one quiet threat could keep me off balance. But she didn't understand that I had learned long ago that real power doesn't come from loud words or quick moves. It comes from the quiet strength of knowing exactly who you are and refusing to let anyone else decide it for you. At home, I lit a single candle and let its soft glow fill the room. I sat in the silence, the gentle flicker of the flame, a steady heartbeat in the dark. I thought about her words, "Watch your back," and let them settle into the quiet of my mind. Not as a warning, but as a reminder. Because while she was busy watching my back, she had forgotten the most important thing: I was already watching hers. I wrote it down in my journal, the words slow and deliberate. She said, "Watch your back." But she forgot I've always been watching. As I turned out the light and let the darkness settle around me, I felt the first true calm I had known in days. Not because the threat was gone, but because I was no longer afraid of it. This was just the beginning. The first thing I did was stop trying to be invisible. Not loud, not reckless, just quietly present. I moved through the office with calm purpose, greeting people with a soft smile, and listening carefully to every word, every tone. I didn't push, didn't pry. I let the small truths come to me in the gentle ebb and flow of casual conversation. Because I knew the power of quiet observation. I knew that people revealed themselves not in grand declarations, but in the small, unguarded moments, the way their voice would catch on a lie, the way their eyes would flicker with something they didn't mean to show. And I was patient. I was ready. She didn't notice at first. She was too busy weaving her plans, her attention always fixed on the next move she thought she needed to make. But I watched. I listened. I let her believe I was still caught in the gentle sway of her words, while I gathered every small thread she left behind. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving her wrong. It was about knowing the shape of the game she was playing and choosing to build something better outside of it. I started with small, quiet questions, asked not to challenge, but to understand. How did that project go? Did you hear what happened at the last meeting? Each one a soft probe, an invitation for truth to slip through the cracks of her careful stories. And slowly, the pieces began to come together. I saw the way she spoke to others, always with that same smile, always with just enough kindness to keep them off balance. I noticed how she shifted when the topic turned to things she didn't want to talk about, her shoulders tightening, her laughter a little too bright, and I learned that her power was built on two things: fear and silence. But I wasn't afraid anymore, and I wasn't silent. In the quiet hours of the evening, I would sit with my journal open, filling the pages with small observations and quiet truths. I wrote down the things she said and the things she didn't, the small contradictions in her words, the tiny flashes of uncertainty in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. Each note felt like a small act of defiance, a gentle assertion that I would not be blind to the truth she was trying to hide. I didn't share what I was learning, not yet. It wasn't the right time. I understood that timing was everything, that the most powerful truths are the ones that wait until the world is ready to hear them. So I gathered my small truths and held them close, letting them grow into something strong and undeniable. One afternoon, as I was leaving the office, I paused by the window and watched her talking to someone new. Her laughter was light, her hands moving in gentle gestures that looked so genuine. But I saw the way her eyes scanned the room, always searching, always measuring. And in that moment, I knew that she wasn't as sure of herself as she wanted everyone to believe. She had told me to watch my back, but she hadn't realized that, in the quiet of her own confidence, she had left herself exposed. Because while she was busy warning me, she wasn't paying attention to the way the ground was shifting beneath her feet. At home, I let the quiet become my strength. I didn't fill the silence with frantic plans or desperate moves. I let the calm settle around me like a cloak, each small observation a thread in the tapestry I was weaving. And in that stillness, I felt a power growing soft and steady, like the slow push of roots breaking through the earth. I didn't need to confront her. Not yet. The time for that would come. For now, it was enough to know that I saw her clearly, that her carefully crafted illusions didn't hold any power over me anymore. One evening, as I walked through the gentle hush of twilight, I let my mind wander back to the moment she had first spoken those words to me. "Watch your back." I let them echo in my mind, felt the weight of them settle like a stone in my chest. And then I let them go, because I wasn't the one who needed to be afraid. I wrote it in my journal that night, the words steady and deliberate. She thinks she's the only one who sees, but I have always been watching. And as I set down my pen, I felt the quiet certainty of that truth settle into my bones. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about playing her game. It was about reclaiming the power she thought she had stolen. the power of my own eyes, my own voice, my own quiet strength. The next morning, I woke with the same calm determination I carried like a secret in my chest. I brewed my coffee and watched the world wake up outside my window, the early light soft and full of promise. And I whispered to the stillness, "Let her watch. Let her worry. I am done being small." Because she had told me to watch my back. But she had forgotten that I had always been watching hers. And this was just the beginning. The change wasn't sudden. It was slow soft, as the shifting of tides quiet, as the way dawn eases into day. But I could feel it. In the way people paused a little longer, to hear what I had to say in the small, thoughtful looks they gave me when she wasn't watching. My calm, steady presence was becoming something she hadn't anticipated, a ripple in the still waters she thought she owned. She didn't notice at first. She was too busy weaving her careful stories, playing her small games in the shadows she believed belonged to her. But I saw the cracks. And slowly, I began to understand that her power had always depended on the silence of those around her, on the easy comfort of people who didn't want to look too closely. But I was looking. I was paying attention to every small detail, every tiny shift in the air around her. And I began to see the quiet truth she had worked so hard to hide. She wasn't as strong as she wanted everyone to believe. It was in the way her smile slipped for just a moment when she thought no one was watching. The way her laughter turned sharp at the edges when she felt threatened. It was in the tiny tremor in her voice when she realized I was no longer playing by her rules. I didn't confront her, not yet. Confrontation was her game, and I had no interest in playing it. Instead, I let her keep talking, keep spinning her careful web of half-truths and easy smiles. I let her believe that I was still caught in the net she had woven so meticulously, and all the while I watched. I waited. One afternoon, in the soft quiet of a small meeting room, I saw the first real sign that she was losing her grip. She was talking, her voice smooth and practiced, but her eyes kept darting toward me, small flickering glances that betrayed the unease she tried so hard to hide. She was worried, not because of what I had said, but because of what I hadn't. She knew I wasn't playing her game anymore, and that terrified her. At home, I wrote it down in my journal, the words slow and deliberate. She thinks I'm still in her story, but I'm writing my own. The truth of it settled into me like a quiet promise, each word a small anchor in the gentle current of my resolve. I didn't change the way I moved through the world. I still smiled politely. I still listened carefully. But there was a new steadiness in me, a calm that came from knowing exactly where I stood. And people began to notice. One morning, a colleague paused by my desk, her voice low and thoughtful. "I don't know what's changed," she said quietly. "But there's something different about you. Stronger." I met her gaze calmly, a small smile playing at my lips. "I think I just stopped pretending," I said softly. And in that small confession, I felt the quiet power of truth settle into my bones. She was still watching me, of course. She always would be. But what she didn't understand was that the more she watched, the more she revealed about herself. The small, sharp edges she tried to hide. The tiny fractures in the calm facade she wore like armor. I began to see the patterns in her behavior, the way she moved when she felt the ground shift beneath her, the small tells that spoke louder than any threat. And I realized then that she wasn't just a threat to me, she was a threat to herself. Because in her need to control the narrative, she had forgotten that the quietest voices often speak the loudest in the end. One evening, as I walked home through the soft hush of falling dusk, I let my mind drift back to the first moment she had tried to put me in my place. "Watch your back," she had said, her voice smooth as glass. And I had believed for a moment that it was a warning I needed to heed. But now I understood that it was never about me. It was about her own fear, the small gnawing knowledge that one day someone would see her for what she really was. I wrote it down that night, the words soft and certain, "She doesn't realize that I see her." And that's her greatest weakness. The thought settled into me, like a quiet truth, a soft heartbeat in the darkness. The next morning, I woke with a calm in my chest that felt like the first breath of dawn. I moved through the day with quiet purpose, letting the small moments of truth find their place in the gentle architecture of my plan. Because I knew now that I didn't need to fight her on her terms. I didn't need to play her game to win. I just needed to keep watching. Because she had told me to watch my back. But she had forgotten the simple truth I had always been watching hers. And in the slow turn of that quiet power, I felt the first real taste of freedom. It began with a single choice. One small, deliberate decision that wasn't about revenge or retribution, but about reminding myself that I was not a pawn in her game. I didn't need to confront her directly. I didn't need to expose her lies to the world just yet. All I needed to do was claim one small victory for myself. So I did. It started with a project at work, a quiet initiative I had been nurturing in the background, something she hadn't bothered to notice because it wasn't part of her narrative. It was small at first, just an idea, a gentle whisper of possibility that I had kept close like a secret. But in the days after I had seen her weakness, I let it grow. I worked quietly, each small step, a deliberate act of faith in myself. I reached out to people who shared my vision, listened carefully to their thoughts, and let them shape my own. I moved with the calm certainty of someone who knew that true strength doesn't come from loud declarations, it comes from quiet action. And as the pieces began to fall into place, I felt a quiet triumph settle into my chest. Because this wasn't about her. This was about me, about building something that was mine alone, something that didn't depend on her approval or her permission. When the project was ready to share, I didn't announce it with fanfare or grand gestures. I simply let the work speak for itself. And in the quiet hum of the office, it found its own power. People began to notice. They paused to listen, to ask questions, to offer small words of encouragement that felt like warm lights in the soft darkness. She noticed too. At first, she tried to ignore it, to brush it off, as nothing more than a small distraction, an insignificant ripple in the smooth surface of her carefully constructed world. But as the days passed, and the project grew, I saw the first flicker of something sharp in her eyes. Not curiosity, not interest, but fear. Because she realized too late that she couldn't control what she hadn't bothered to see. One afternoon, she cornered me in the hallway, her voice soft and smooth as ever. "I hear you've been busy," she said, her smile gentle, but her eyes cold. "Don't overextend yourself. You wouldn't want to get in over your head." I met her gaze calmly, my own smile quiet and sure. "Thank you for the advice," I said softly. "But I'm exactly where I need to be." For a moment, she just stared at me, the mask slipping in the brief flicker of something like surprise. She hadn't expected me to stand my ground. She hadn't expected me to speak without the tremor of fear she was so used to hearing. And in that silence, I felt the first real shift in the balance between us, a small, almost imperceptible crack in the smooth surface of her control. After she walked away, I took a slow breath and let the quiet victory settle into my bones. Because I knew that I had done more than prove her wrong. I had proven to myself that I was stronger than her doubts, stronger than her threats, stronger than the small world she had tried to trap me in. At home that night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, the city lights flickering soft and golden in the darkness. I thought about the small, steady steps that had brought me here, the quiet hours of work, the gentle patience of letting things unfold in their own time. And I realized that this first victory wasn't just a sign that I could succeed. It was a sign that I could do it on my own terms. I wrote it down in my journal, the words soft and certain, "I don't need to play her game. I just need to play my own." The next morning, I woke with a calm in my chest that felt like the first breath of spring. I moved through the day with quiet purpose, each small action a reminder that I was building something she couldn't touch. And as I watched the world shift around me, I knew that this was only the beginning, because she had told me to watch my back. But she had forgotten the simple truth: I had never been playing her game. I had been building something else entirely. And in the quiet power of that realization, I felt the first real taste of freedom. The days after my quiet victory felt like a test, a careful balancing act between calm and vigilance. She didn't say anything to me directly, but I saw the way her eyes narrowed when she thought no one was watching. Her laughter was a little too bright, her smile a little too sharp. And I understood then that she had decided to strike back not openly, but in the small hidden ways she had always favored. At first, it was nothing more than whispers, small, careful comments slipped into conversations she thought I wouldn't hear. A question here, a half-truth there. She planted doubts like seeds, tending them with careful precision. "I'm just concerned," she said softly to someone I trusted. "She seems distracted lately." "Are you sure she's up for this?" I let the words wash over me, like water refusing to let them find purchase. I knew what she was doing. She wanted me to doubt myself. She wanted to remind me that she was still in control, but I had learned the power of silence. I didn't rise to her bait. I let her words settle into the air, let them float there until they lost their sting. And in the quiet that followed, I found my own strength. Because I knew that her power depended on my fear, and I was done giving it to her. She tried other ways, two small acts of sabotage that spoke louder than any of her careful words. Documents that went missing just before a meeting. Emails that never seemed to arrive. A project I had been quietly nurturing, reassigned to someone else, without a word of explanation. Each move was designed to unseat me, to push me back into the shadows she believed I belonged in. But I didn't let her see me falter. I didn't let her see me scramble to fix the things she tried to undo. Instead, I moved with quiet determination, each small step a promise to myself that I wouldn't let her win. I reached out to those who had seen my quiet work and let them see that I was still here, still steady. And slowly, I felt the balance begin to shift. One evening, as I walked home through the soft hush of twilight, I thought about the ways she had tried to break me, about the small, careful manipulations she had spent so long perfecting. And I realized that her power was never in the things she did. It was in the silence she expected from the people she hurt. But I wasn't silent anymore. At home, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, the soft glow of the lamp wrapping the room in gentle light. I let the quiet settle around me, like a shield, each breath, a small act of defiance. I wrote in my journal the words steady and deliberate. She moves in the shadows because she's afraid of the light, but I'm not afraid of the dark. The next morning, I woke early and moved through the world with calm purpose. I saw the small glances people gave me, the quiet questions in their eyes. I knew what they were wondering if I was as strong as I seemed. And I was. Because I understood now that strength wasn't about never being shaken. It was about standing steady even when the world tries to push you down. She still tried to provoke me, of course. She couldn't help herself. It was in the small cutting remarks she slipped into casual conversation. "You know not everyone is cut out for this," she said once, her voice low and soft, her smile gentle and sharp all at once. I met her gaze calmly, my own smile quiet. "Maybe not," I said softly, "but I am." And in that simple answer, I saw the flicker of something she didn't want to show: uncertainty. Each day, I watched the small cracks in her careful mask grow a little wider. The way her laughter would falter when she realized I was still standing. The way her eyes would narrow when she realized that I hadn't given up. And I knew then that she was starting to see what I had always known, that she couldn't win a game I wasn't playing. At home, I let myself rest. I let the quiet become a balm, each small moment of peace, a reminder that I didn't have to fight her battles for her. I was done dancing to the rhythm of her manipulations. I was done letting her decide the shape of my story. I wrote it down in my journal, the words a soft promise to myself: she can move in the shadows all she wants. I am done living there. And as I set down my pen, I felt the quiet weight of that truth settle into me like a stone, solid and unshakable. That night, I lay in the soft dark of my room and let the quiet wash over me. I thought about the woman she had tried to make me small and afraid, always watching my back. And I thought about the woman I had chosen to become, instead calm and patient, always watching hers. Because she had told me to watch my back. But she had forgotten that I had always been watching hers. And in the quiet power of that truth, I found my own strength. this was just the beginning. The day of the reveal was quiet at first, as if the world was holding its breath. I woke early, the morning light, soft and golden through the curtains, and felt the calm certainty settle into me like an old friend. Today wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about playing her game. It was about finally letting the truth stand on its own. I moved through the morning with steady hands, each small action deliberate and unhurried. I made my tea and sipped it slowly, feeling the warmth settle in my chest. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, each exhale a small act of letting go. Because I knew that whatever happened today, I was done carrying her shadows for her. At work, the air felt charged, every conversation laced with something just beneath the surface. People moved a little more carefully, their eyes flicking toward me when they thought I wasn't looking. I felt the weight of their questions, the quiet curiosity that had grown around me in the weeks since she had first whispered those words. But I didn't let it shake me. I didn't let it rush me. I held my calm like a shield. When the meeting began, she was already there, her smile as smooth as ever, her laughter light and practiced. But I saw the small crack in her composure, the way her fingers tapped just a little too quickly against the table, the way her eyes darted to me and away again. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know what. I waited until the room had settled, until the last polite laughter had faded into expectant silence. And then I spoke. My voice was soft, but it carried in the quiet. "I'd like to share something," I said, my words measured and calm. She looked up sharply, her smile faltering for just a moment. "Of course," she said smoothly, but I saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. I laid out the work I had been building for weeks, the project she had dismissed as unimportant, the ideas she had brushed aside with soft laughter and careful words. I spoke with quiet certainty, each word a small piece of the truth she had tried to bury. And as I spoke, I saw the way the room shifted, the way people leaned in their eyes, bright with the quiet thrill of something real. She tried to interrupt, of course. She always did. A small cutting comment slipped into the silence like a blade. "I'm not sure this is the right time for this," she said, her voice soft but sharp. I met her gaze calmly. "It's exactly the right time," I said. And in that moment, I saw the first real crack in her calm. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush my words. I let the quiet power of the truth settle into the room like a gentle rain. And in that soft certainty, I felt the shift, the slow turn of something that had always been mine, finally stepping into the light. When I finished, there was a long, quiet pause. And then the questions came, not from her, but from the people who had always been content to let her speak for them. "How did we not see this before?" someone asked softly. "Why didn't we know?" And in those questions, I heard the small, quiet victory I had been working toward for so long. Because the truth was no longer hidden, and it was stronger than any of her careful words. She sat there, her smile frozen in place, her eyes darting between faces that no longer looked to her for answers. She tried to laugh, tried to brush it off with a soft wave of her hand. "It's interesting," she said lightly, but her voice didn't have the same easy lilt it used to, because she knew and I knew that this wasn't just interesting, it was real. After the meeting, people came up to me one by one, their words quiet but sure. "Thank you," one person said, "for speaking up." Another added, "I think we all needed to hear this." Each word was a small light, a quiet affirmation of everything I had known in the silence of my own thoughts. She didn't say anything as she left. She didn't need to. I saw it in the tight set of her shoulders, in the way her laughter didn't quite reach her eyes. She had told me to watch my back, but she had forgotten that I had never stopped watching hers. And in the quiet power of that truth, I felt the last of her hold slip away. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, the city lights flickering soft and gold in the darkness. I wrote in my journal the words slow and careful. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand. And in that simple line, I felt the quiet power of everything I had worked for settle into me like a gentle breath. Because this wasn't about her anymore. It never really had been. This was about me, about choosing to stand in the light of my own truth, no matter how long it had taken to get there. And as I turned out the light and let the soft hush of the night wrap around me, I knew that this was only the beginning. The days after the reveal felt like waking up to a world that was both familiar and entirely new. The office moved with its usual rhythms keyboards, clicking quiet laughter in the hallways, but the air felt different. People looked at me differently, with something like respect in their eyes. And for the first time in a long while, I felt seen. She tried to pretend nothing had changed. She moved through the office with the same careful smile, her voice sweet and soft. But I could see it in the way she avoided my eyes, in the small, quick movements that betrayed her calm. She was still trying to hold her world together, still trying to convince herself that nothing had shifted. But it had. I didn't need to speak loudly about my victory. I didn't need to parade it in front of everyone. I let the quiet truth of it settle around me like a gentle light. Because I knew that real power doesn't need to shout, it simply stands. And in the soft strength of that standing, I found a calm I hadn't known I was missing. One morning, as I walked through the office, a colleague paused beside me. "I just wanted to say," she said softly, her eyes warm, "that what you shared, it mattered. We needed to hear it." Her words were quiet, but they felt like a warm hand on my shoulder, a gentle affirmation that I wasn't alone in what I had seen. I smiled and thanked her, my voice calm and sure, because I understood now that every small moment of kindness, every quiet word of support, was a small victory of its own. Proof that I wasn't just surviving, I was growing. She kept her distance in those days, her laughter a little too bright, her words a little too careful. I watched her move through the office like someone walking on a wire, her balance fragile and unsteady. And in that delicate sway, I saw the truth of what had always been hidden, that her power was never about strength. It was about fear. And I wasn't afraid of her anymore. At home, I let the quiet be my companion. I spent my evenings wrapped in the soft glow of lamplight, my journal open on my lap. I wrote down the small details of the days, the quiet glances, the careful words, the gentle shifts in the way people spoke to me. Each one a quiet reminder that the story I had built in silence was finally being seen. One evening, as I sat with my tea, I thought about the woman she had tried to make me small and quiet, always watching my back. And I thought about the woman I had become, instead calm and patient, no longer afraid to take up space. And in that gentle reflection, I felt something settle into me, like a promise I would never let anyone decide my worth again. She still tried, of course. Old habits are hard to break. She would slip small, cutting remarks into conversations, her smile as sweet as ever. But each time I met her words with a calm she couldn't touch. And in that calm, I saw her own uncertainty grow, because she was starting to see what I had always known, that I wasn't playing her game anymore. One afternoon, as I was leaving the office, she stopped me in the hallway. "You're very sure of yourself these days," she said softly, her voice almost gentle. I met her gaze steadily, my own smile quiet and sure. "I'm sure of the truth," I said. And in that simple answer, I saw the flicker of something she couldn't hide, a quiet fear that her words no longer held the weight they once had. That night, I wrote it in my journal. "I'm no longer waiting for her to see me. I see myself." The words felt like a final closing of a door that had always been left just slightly ajar in the back of my mind. And in that soft certainty, I felt free. The next morning, I woke early, the world outside wrapped in soft light. I moved through the quiet of my small apartment with a calm that felt unbreakable. I brewed my tea, the warmth of it, a gentle anchor in the hush of dawn. And as I sipped it slowly, I whispered to the stillness, "I am not small. I am not playing. I am building." Because she had told me to watch my back. But she had forgotten the simplest truth: I had never stopped watching hers. And in the quiet strength of that knowing, I felt a peace that no one could take from me. This wasn't about winning. It wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about choosing to live in the light of my own truth. And as I walked into the new day, I carried that light with me, a soft, steady flame that would never be extinguished. The last day of this chapter in my life was as quiet as the first. The sun rose soft and golden, the city outside my window, breathing in slow, steady rhythm. I woke before the alarm, my mind calm, and my heart sure. Because I knew in that early light that I had already claimed what she could never take away, my own quiet strength. I moved through my morning routine with a sense of gentle ceremony, each small act a soft promise to myself. The tea steeped in silence, the steam rising in slow curls that reminded me of the quiet breath of possibility. I sat by the window, my journal open on my lap, and wrote the words that had carried me through every shadow she had tried to cast. I was never playing. I was always watching. At work, the air felt soft and expectant, like the moment just before rain. People moved with careful purpose, their words hushed but warm. There were no more whispers, no more hidden doubts. Just the quiet recognition of what had shifted, the small but certain acknowledgement that I had found my own way to stand. She was there, of course. She always would be in some small way. Her presence was as soft and sharp as ever, her voice gentle, her eyes bright. But I no longer felt the sting of her words, the weight of her gaze. I had learned that power doesn't come from how others see you. It comes from how you see yourself. She didn't say much that day. She moved through the office with her usual calm, her laughter light and practiced. But I could see the way her eyes flickered when she looked at me, the small, careful watchfulness of someone who knows the ground has shifted. She still wanted to believe she was in control, but I knew better. And more importantly, so did she. In the quiet of the afternoon, she stopped by my desk, her fingers light on the edge of the table. "You're very calm today," she said softly, her voice smooth as always. I met her gaze steadily, my smile quiet and sure. "I've always been calm," I said. "You just never saw it." For a moment she held my gaze, and in that silence, I saw the truth settle into her eyes. She had thought her words could define me, her games could break me, but I had never been playing by her rules. And in the quiet power of that realization, I saw the last of her hold on me slip away. When she walked away, the air felt lighter, and I knew that whatever came next, it would be mine to shape. That night, I sat by the window with a glass of wine, the city lights soft and golden in the darkness. I thought about everything I had learned, the quiet strength of patience, the steady power of choosing to stand. I thought about the woman I had been when she first whispered those words to me, and the woman I had become in the silence of my own resolve. I wrote it in my journal one last time, the words soft but certain. She said, "Watch your back." But she forgot I had always been watching. And as I set down my pen, I felt a quiet joy settle into me, like a final exhale, gentle and unbreakable. Because this wasn't about her anymore. It never really had been. It was about me, about the choice to live my own truth, to build my own story in the quiet, steady spaces she had never bothered to see. The next morning, I woke with the same calm certainty I had carried through every step of this journey. I looked in the mirror and saw not the woman she had tried to define, but the woman I had chosen to become, calm and strong, patient and powerful. And if you're listening now, if you've ever felt the weight of someone else's doubts pressing down on your shoulders, I want you to remember this. You don't have to play their game. You don't have to shrink to fit their narrow view of who you are. Your worth isn't measured by their rules. It's yours, quiet, steady, and unshakable. So take a breath. Take a step. And remember that you are more than their fears. You are more than their shadows. You are enough exactly as you are. Because she thought she could tell me to watch my back. But she forgot the simplest truth: I had never stopped watching hers. And that is my final word.